Hi, everyone. I am John Santaferraro, and this is the Digital Analyst, where AI makes sense and digital dominance begins. So grab a cup of coffee or pour a glass of wine and join me in my Tuscan home in the hills between Florence and Lucca.
The Digital Analyst with John Santaferraro, powered by Insight Jam.
In this podcast, I hope you will walk away with a better understanding of AI and some practical insight on how to utilize your digital assets to dominate your market. My guest today is Mike Ferguson. Mike, a big digital welcome to you.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
You know, Mike, there's so much to say about you. You've been the CEO of Intelligent Business Strategies for 31 years. You're an independent industry analyst, a much sought after keynote speaker, developer, and teacher of 11 data and analytics master courses, the conference chair at Big Data London, the fastest growing data and analytics conference maybe in the world. And by the way, I got this off your website. You have 32 years of experience in BI and corporate performance management, 40 years in data management, 18 in smart business, and 11 in big data analytics. And if my math is right, that means if you started when you're 20, you are 121 years old. And wow, do you ever look amazing for your age?
I thought you were about to say, "Oh, wow, boy, don't you look it."
Mike, welcome.
I wouldn't add those years, John. I would kind of live in a parallel right now.
Mike, welcome to the Digital Analyst.
Thank you, John. Real pleasure to be here.
You know, I had the privilege of hearing your keynote at the recent Big Data London event with more than 20,000 attendees. It was crazy. It was huge. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a crazy show. I mean, I don't think in our wildest dreams we imagined it would grow to the size it is, but it's an enormous privilege to be chairing it and to have been there kind of from the get-go.
I don't know how you did it in your keynote, but you packed into 15 minutes about a month worth of research and one of the best overviews of the analytics and AI explosion that I've heard. I wasn't surprised, by the way, that you started out by talking about generative AI, but I was surprised with how quickly Gen AI seems to be approaching ubiquity. What in the world is happening with generative AI?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a phenomenon that is kind of pretty well penetrated in every aspect of computing, not just data and analytics. You know, everything from infrastructure. You got AI-driven everything. I mean, I think obviously last year in 2023, when I opened the show at Big Data London, I was talking about the very brand new kind of emergence of generative AI in data management and analytics, and in that time we were looking at a handful maybe of technologies on the show floor that were demonstrating that. Whereas this year it was just everywhere. Whether it be to do with data stores, like databases and lake houses. Whether it's in data management software like Data Fabric, with AI-assisted kind of discovery and curation of data, and even conversational data modeling, for goodness sake. Generative AI in data engineering, to generate pipelines and as well as AI-assisted data governance. And of course, it's already in BI tools, with conversational analytics and obviously data science platforms becoming the kind of vehicle by which we kind of fine-tune and make these large language models enterprise ready, if you like. But yes, I mean, it's penetrated pretty well every aspect. And, I think the reason it's gaining so much attention is because of things like productivity benefits that brings, which of course shortens time to value and potentially allows automation in certain tasks that, of course, can not only shorten the time, but also make you more efficient, help you reduce costs. So, I mean, overall, I think it's, got everybody's attention. And clearly, next stage is like, well, how do we get this, to be enterprise grade and get it deployed in order to, maximize the value coming out of it.
We're here talking about trends. And so the speed at which Gen AI came on the scene and exploded is phenomenal. I was reading that Hugging Face, for example, has if you combine all of their language models and apps and algorithms, that they've got over 1 million listings, and that's just Hugging Face. So this we're talking about trends. This thing is exploding faster than anything I've seen. What are you seeing out there?
I agree. I mean, I think it's exploding everywhere. I still think there's a lot of research underway trying to make it better, make it more accurate, for example. But, I think most organizations are looking at this as something to add to their existing architecture. I mean, I don't think, we're going to kind of cross a line through and rip and replace everything. This is another capability, if you like, to add to what they already have. And I think, probably the organizations that are really leading, if you like, in terms of trying to implement this stuff are, I guess, well down the track towards ensuring that things like model selection that they're going to use within their organizations are, front of mind. But I think as well, all the other, if you like, components that they need in order to make this a success are also, in place. But yeah, I agree that with so many models and whatnot on Hugging Face that, very clearly organizations will or could potentially struggle to know what to use in order to get maximum value for their business out of it. But I think this is really going to be where people are, selective and looking at, what use cases do they have? What's the business benefit of deploying generative AI in those particular parts of the business that they've identified, and then what are the most appropriate large language models that are going to fit their business needs in order for them to, get maximum value. I mean, obviously things like chatbots and AI assistants going to be fairly high priority. I think that's fairly true in terms of even customer service and whatnot, which has been around for a while. But I think there'll be some prioritization around what to do first and in what order. But I'm certainly seeing some of my clients looking very much at the use of generative AI in customer-facing areas, or even in front office functions, supporting the need to generate content and whatnot, as well as one or two back office areas. But nevertheless, yeah, it's an exciting time. But I think companies want to know that the levels of accuracy are there, and also I think the there's no things like infringement of intellectual properties and all of those kind of good things. So I think AI governance, certainly in Europe at least, has come to the fore pretty quickly alongside the excitement of generative AI.
So given the magnitude of the growth in Gen AI especially, but also in AI in general, what do you suggest to listeners out there? What do they do to keep up with the pace of growth and to better understand, what's happening in this marketplace? It's not easy. It's complex, and it gets more complex every day.
It's not easy at all. I mean, I think the pace is kind of crazy, with technologies and models even leapfrogging each other on a weekly basis, if not more frequently than that. I mean, obviously, it has to come back to value, John. I mean, you could get hung up on technology and just get sucked into that whole sort of area and forget about what is it you're trying to use this for as a business, and how is it really going to deliver value for you. So I think it has to be related back, to things like business value. I mean, clearly, there are, as I said, things like chatbots or, AI assistants, kind of, document analysis, things like intelligent document processing and that and other, I think are pretty high on the agenda, supporting customer experiences and customer service and whatnot. Even data security and privacy, is kind of high on the agenda around generative AI. Organizations really have to kind of take stock of, well, what are the use cases? And then are there any generic ones, if you like, across their front office, such as customer related things? Are there any industry specific use cases, peculiar to the particular vertical within which an organization is operating, and identify what those are. And then obviously then you're looking at technology choices. But I think for the vast majority of organizations, they're going to be looking at adding AI specific technologies to their existing setup. Maybe there's some degree, there's other trends out there that we may talk about in a moment that are perhaps causing some kind of redesign or overhaul or whatever you want to call that of data management, of data architectures in general. I mean, I talked about that at the keynote as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like for somebody out there who maybe is not a technologist or an expert in AI or generative AI, if they just watch what's going on with Gen AI in their particular industry, in their area of business, that's more trackable. It's too much. I can't keep up with it, and it's my area of coverage as an industry analyst. It's too much.
There's obvious places where it's surfacing. I mean, I think if you're seeing it, first of all, in obvious places like tools, BI tools with conversational analytics, is just kind of more like a converting prompts to queries and explaining the insights and stuff like that. You're seeing it also, I guess, surfacing in data science, where organizations might have existing tool sets there and the ability to make use of large language models in that environment to tune those to be able to make them enterprise data aware for your own data within your own enterprise. All of that seems to be happening already in data science tooling. And so you will see it surface there. For those working in data management, you'll see lots of places where generative AI is already surfacing in the tools that they would be using to help people be more productive there. But I think out there in the consumers, if you like, across the business in most organizations, it's pretty evident that this is also going to get embedded, if you like, within applications and processes that they're currently using. And so they might not be using specialist tooling separately. They might actually be accessing this kind of capability within the applications.
I want to dig into that a little more in a minute, but a second thing that before we get there, you talked about AI agents as a second trend and AI orchestration. Definitely critical areas to follow here at the end of 2024 and 25. And I like to talk about generative AI as sort of the icing on the cake, and it's really only as good as what sits below it, because Gen AI can't do a lot of what AI is meant to do. It's a great interface, a great human interface, right? But there's a lot below that as well. So what exactly is an AI agent, and what do you see happening in this area?
I think what's brought about AI agents is really a need to be more accurate with generative AI. I think there's always been concerns about generative AI hallucinating, large language models hallucinating. And I think single large language models will hallucinate. But I think what's becoming evident is that large language models are only part of the solution, and that needs to be combined with other things like web search and other tooling in order to be able to get answers to questions. And so what we now see is the emergence of agents, which are an advance, if you like, to do more reasoning, to automatically reason and plan. And there's different, reasoning patterns and whatnot in order to be able to do this. But quite clearly, that's still unfolding. But I think what we're seeing is that they can reason, control, and orchestrate automation. They can reflect, if you like, and look at what you can validate, if you like, what generative AI is content is being created. You can use it. These agents can use other tools. They can do something called planning and something called multi-agent collaboration, which is really a way to make use of other agents in order to improve the overall accuracy. And what we're seeing is quite significant leaps in overall accuracy, perhaps where they've in the past been sort of in the 60-65% sort of bracket. We're kind of seeing the emergence of AI agents and new reasoning patterns, taking that up to the kind of 90 to 95% accuracy. So really big leaps in accuracy, and being able to act by orchestrating tools and services, to respond to particular problems, and also to continuously observe and learn from that. So I think that, the big driver behind this is the ability to improve overall accuracy, but also to leverage other technologies in combination with generative AI to help do that.
Yeah.
But I also would say there's kind of, two forms of AI agents emerging. Remember that machine learning is a form of artificial intelligence. And we have predictive and prescriptive analytics there, which have been around for a lot of years. And I think what we're seeing is generative AI agents, but we're also seeing the emergence of what I would call real-time monitoring AI agents, kind of real-time analytics, monitoring agents, or more automated decisioning. So generative AI agents to help improve accuracy and reason and orchestrate how to answer questions, but I think, and to generate content. But I think also we also have decision automation, agents looking at events and things like that around the enterprise to be able to take action. And you may even see in the future that rather than us having rules-based decisioning on real-time analytics as we have today, that the decisioning around what to do when an event occurs may be taken by a generative AI agent that is reasoning and deciding what to do in an automated way. So we've got a way to go yet with AI agents, but I think it's quite clear that that's moving at a pace. But I think people shouldn't get, I think people should keep their feet on the ground here and work out, what is it, that we want to do with this stuff and where, in order to get maximum business impact rather than get sucked into this hype.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I have this prediction that I've made it public. So now I can say it again, that I think within 9 to 12 months, sometime in 2025, the discussion about AI agents and agentic architectures, I think it's going to surpass Gen AI. You can agree or disagree.
Oh, no. I think that there's no doubt agentic is already the new word. I mean, it was definitely the word on the exhibition floor at Big Data London, and I think we're already seeing the marketers winding up the messages around this. There's no question about that, but I think that there's two things going on here. Yes, of course, that's emerging technologies and the technology space, but businesses, whether they're banks, retailers, airlines, pharmaceuticals or whatever, I think really owe it to themselves to identify what the use cases are before they get sucked into all of this. Otherwise, they'll be playing around with it a lot and not getting a lot of value out of it. I think if you really can identify the use cases, get some real candidate proof of concepts, where you can look to use this, then I think you're going to hit the ground running a lot faster than if you just, sort of leap into the technology and then try and find a problem for it. I mean, I think that there's no question that will be a hot space, in 2025 without a doubt. But I still think it's part of a, it's not going to replace all the other things that people have already got in place. I think it's in addition to, and of course there will be, if you like, the rise of the digital employees. These agents are effectively able to perform tasks, and as a result of that can automate certain tasks and therefore tackle issues, where there's, labor shortages. In fact, I was talking to a manufacturer recently about labor shortages, and very, very clearly, some of those tasks could be performed by AI agents. And I think, clearly there's automation opportunity there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're right. We will create lots of these agents going forward, both to do automation of operational tasks or to assist us in doing those quicker in everyday business. And I think also the use of AI agents to automate decisioning in order to be able to handle that side of it as well. So you're right. Yes, we will have lots of them out there, but again, they're going. We have to organize them, decide where we're going to use them or for what purpose.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out.
So you've talked about a couple of trends. One, obviously, GenAI is exploding. Number two, we're seeing the emergence of AI agents. So with this explosion of AI agents and generative AI comes a move towards the democratization of data and insight. In today's world, even more in tomorrow's world, anyone will be able to ask questions about anything in simple language and get an answer that normally would have required far more expertise. And of course, that means more people gain access to insight, much like more people gained more access to information when the internet was popularized. This time it's access to insight. Doesn't that introduce a whole new set of challenges? What are some of the issues that come with the democratization of insight, with these trends toward AI agents and Gen AI?
Oh, well, that's a great question, John. Clearly, there's several things. I mean, one is if we're going to democratize development of pretty well everything, then clearly, there's the human element, human side of this. That is to say, how on earth do you organize this and prevent it generating into chaos? I mean, I'll get back to the lots of people asking questions in a second, but if we're also able to use generative AI as a user interface to develop things, whether that's to build data pipelines or data models or ask questions with regards to BI or generate code or and automate certain tasks and so on and build all of that, then clearly, I think organizations really need to manage all of these potential projects and create a kind of federated operating model where they kind of have here's what we're trying to achieve as a business, and then who's building what where in order to coordinate that development rather than have it just kind of a Wild West environment. Because we've been down that road before, 10 or, probably 12 years ago. When self-service data prep came out and it was madness. And we don't want that again. We need it coordinated and organized. And I think that's a key element. But I think the other aspect to this is going back to your point about lots of people asking questions. We will absolutely see many more concurrent users coming out of this. And so, whereas things like BI probably flatlined around 25 to 30% of the employee base, generative AI could really move that needle into far more people able to do, ask questions, whether that's by keying it in or just asking the question with voice to text these days. And so, given that that's the case, you will see a huge spike in scalability, that is to say, but not scalability for complex questions or complex queries, scalability in terms of concurrent usage. So kind of everything under that has to scale to handle those concurrent users, all the way down to data stores and databases, be able to handle that, because we're going to see a big spike there. I think as well, the other impact is, it can't just be, going from natural language prompts to generating SQL. It has to be possible through a generative AI interface to combine this with, descriptive and diagnostic and predictive and prescriptive analytics, to automatically explain the impact of insights and put it into a story to be able to reason and recommend and act and record actions and that kind of thing, and even link reasoning to planning to ensure that the actions are going to contribute to the kind of outcomes that you've got in your business strategy. All of that has to kind of come to the fore here, and of course we want to be able to even embed all of that capability, using conversational analytics, even that leverages those other things, and embed that even into applications, much like today, where we've been able for some time to be able to embed BI into applications, but embed conversational analytics into applications, where again, the consumer, the user of those applications doesn't have to deal with some complex user interface. They can just ask questions in the app that they're currently using. So, I think there are big connotations here. So high performance of all of this is going to matter. I think as well, in order to make it provide context to these questions, you're seeing what we see as retrieval augmented generation, where we've been creating vectors and vector databases. And I think we're going to be creating a heck of a lot of those, and we need that to perform as well. But I think as well, given all of the potential agents and uses, certainly where I am and where you are in Europe, AI governance is going to be absolutely critical, in order to make use of this and get maximum value out of it. Because most enterprises, certainly in Europe now, are having to remain compliant with the new European Union AI Act, which of course carries pretty severe penalties if you don't.
Yeah. So with this democratization, you have more users, you have more need for performance, and along with that, you have the cost of compute, right? All of that translates into cost, right? And beyond that, power for all of the GPUs that it takes to be able to get the performance that you need for these large language models and for artificial intelligence, right? All of that. I mean, these are questions that there's a whisper about them, and they probably need to rise up, because everybody wants the artificial intelligence. They want everybody to be able to use it. They want to see generative AI succeed. They see a future with AI agents, but it's going to cost money, and it's going to require power way beyond anything that any country that's in existence today can even produce. So what do we do with that?
Well, I think firstly, organizations, this is really where small language models as well as large language models are going to matter. But I think, some of this will be happening on premises, in terms of training these things up and making them perhaps more enterprise data aware. Because if there's sensitive data involved, you don't want PII leakage, in terms of, finding its way into vectors and whatnot, as clearly that would cause issues, but I agree. I mean, in the sense that you just have to look at some of the figures I shared at Big Data London on investments, with some eye-watering amounts of VC money going into new vendors with focused on generative AI models. I think I gave a few examples of that. I think X.AI had over $6 billion are given to it. Anthropic, also again, multiple billions, Scale.ai also. So, what we're seeing here, I think from a corporate perspective, is a lot of concern on CFO faces, especially with so many technologies leveraging generative AI behind the scenes. I think this is really bringing FinOps to the fore. I think it's really a case that, organizations need a holistic view of this in order to, not overspend. I mean, there's already concerns, plenty of articles written about, over concerns of overspend. There's multiple reasons why that can happen. But I absolutely agree that, I don't have all the answers here, and I don't think any vendor does, but I do believe that, clearly there is concern as to several things. One is sustainability as well as cost, around all of this. And so, organizations will want to know that, they're able to take advantage of this at much lower cost, because we can't just keep adding more and more cost, especially with consumption-based pricing and everybody using all of this, to do stuff, which is generating huge amounts of compute on the cloud. I mean, I think, there's a point where I think we're going to have to look at other options if this carries on. We can't keep, having huge lift, if you like, in cost as a result of using all of these underlying technologies to the point where they become prohibitively expensive. There's no question, though, that companies that are leading in this space are, by I mean like in different vertical industries, customers, if you like, that are leading in this space, are really careful that that they're selecting what are the use cases that they want to implement. They're staying focused around that. They're making sure they're adding AI-specific technologies to their overall existing architectures, rather than rip and replace and replacing it with something else. But I think because they're sort of staying level-headed about this, and looking at the appropriate models and selecting those, making sure that they've got the compute that's needed. I think they'll manage it much better than if we just kind of, let it loose and say, here you are, folks, knock yourself out with all of this kind of stuff. I mean, I think quite clearly there's going to have to be a program of development, and, companies will stick to those in order to make it, in order to, remain within that boundaries of what's acceptable to them in overall cost. But
one of the challenges, Mike, I think, when you have billions of dollars flowing into a market like this, you have billions that are going into product development, which is really good. You also have billions going to the marketing organizations to be able to hype up and to be able to sell to vendors. And unfortunately for most organizations, the primary voices that they're hearing right now are vendor voices, and they need to hear other voices. They need to find someone who understands this, I think, who can also guide them through the decisions they're making and the investments that they're making in AI technology to make sure that there is a return on investment. And I think maybe that's a part of AI governance, which brings me to
100%.
Brings me to another question: is AI governance just an extension of data governance, or is there more to it? What do you when you think of AI governance, what do you think needs to be done?
Oh, a lot. To answer your question, there are no question that data governance vendors are adding AI governance to their offerings in order to extend their capability there. But it's also true that data science organization tooling vendors are adding AI governance capability in their platforms. There's a kind of a split going on here. But that's from a vendor perspective. When you look at it from a customer perspective who's needing to implement this, then they've got a number of things they have to do. I mean, first of all, they've got to adopt sort of reasonable best practices, like creating an inventory of AI models, having a risk registry, you have to have people who are accountable. We have to say who is accountable for each of these models. We have to be able to evaluate and mitigate risk. We've got to be able to govern AI development, and we've got to implement things like AI observability. So use cases have to be defined. Companies will want things like prompt and risk assessment templates. We're going to want formal processes and enable auditing around this, both in terms of like model imports, because we may not be, as you say, you might be importing something from Hugging Face, model testing, I think model approval after the tests have been done, model deployment. All of these are going to have to get formalized. I think also AI has to be explainable, because that's needed for compliance anyway. And, I think we want to be able to, do things like use data catalogs and knowledge graphs and whatnot to help enable, explanations of AI to be data aware. Because, data catalogs, for example, know about company data. AI observability, as I already mentioned, kind of trying to grade the health of a model. Are we getting things like bias detected and stuff like that? Can we, data catalogs, for example, can automatically detect sensitive data like personally identifiable information. And, in my opinion, that should be done before we start creating embeddings and start chunking data, so that we know, by the way, that this data has already got PII in it. And so we want to avoid leakage and not make sure that doesn't go into the, creation of vectors and whatnot.
Just want to make sure I want to make sure I got that straight. You're suggesting starting AI governance up front. Don't wait until you're down the road and you've got generative AI going and AI agents going and general AI in place. Start your AI governance now. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Absolutely, yes. I think it has to be there. Obviously, we are seeing the emergence of technology to do things like hallucination detection. We're seeing, the emergence of technology to detect personally identifiable information in prompts and stuff like that, to prevent that, happening. On unstructured data, we're seeing technologies helping to do watermark detection, for things like intellectual property to avoid, using someone else's intellectual property. We're also seeing what I would call guardrails built into tools, which is going to allow us to, avoid things like toxic words, or banks, for example, are not allowed to give financial advice, for compliance reasons. So we can't have any content being generated that's giving financial advice.
Sounds like an opportunity for a new Mike Ferguson master course.
Maybe I'll add it to my existing data governance one rather than have a separate one. I don't know yet. But there's already plenty of stuff emerging to help people get their heads around it. But of course, at least for companies operating in Europe, they are already in a situation where live legislation, is active across 27 nations in the European Union, and the UK not being in the European Union is following suit pretty quickly. And of course, I'm sure, much like GDPR when it came out, we saw other countries and states around the world implementing legislation there. We'll see the same thing across the world. And so companies are going to have to do this. And I think the earlier they get started and get that in place, I think, the whole thing will be managed much better going forward.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.
So one last question, Mike. Imagine you're sitting with the CEO of a large corporation. His CIO and CTO have just come to him with a plan to invest 30% of their 2025 IT budget on generative AI and AI. and there's some specifics in the plan, but not enough to fully understand their intention. You've been reading management publications, and you know as a CEO that you need to do something, but you're not sure what to do at this point. What would you say to this CEO?
Get your employees to highlight use cases where there's real opportunity for automation, because they're the ones doing those tasks manually right now. And some of them are, just boring and repetitive and could be done by other technologies. So leverage your employee base, identify use cases, and start to be able to rank those in terms of, overall return on investment to the organization, and come up with a plan. Because I think, rather than sit here and think, well, what are we going to do next, and just be led by hype, I think there's lots of opportunity within organizations to leverage generative AI. And I'm sure the employees themselves are the ones that like that best, because initially, as I said, I would be recommending getting AI governance in place, but I'd be certainly looking to come up with a set of use cases, and then double down on that and rank them and get them down to a short list, if you like, and start the ball rolling there. And I think as well, how can you integrate that into your existing setup in a way that you can take advantage of without forcing people to rip and replace everything? I think these are practical things that keep your feet on the ground, because technology will always be moving. There'll always be new things emerging.
Yeah.
And, we've seen frenzies in the past, but I think most executives that I meet these days are kind of, let's say, had enough of playgrounds. We don't want another playground here that's going to run for a couple of years, doing tire kicking and all that kind of thing, and burning a lot of money. I think a lot of executives think the playground idea is over. What we want here is real business value coming from this. And so therefore, keep it tight, keep it organized, and make sure, you even if development is being democratized, that there's a kind of master plan. There's a Kanban chart, I want to call it, a huge Kanban chart saying who's doing what, where, and for what business purpose. I think if we keep our eye on the ball here, then companies will absolutely succeed with this stuff.
I love it. I love what you said about using the people in your organization to evaluate the use cases and the implementations to be able to see if there is real value in what's being done. The people who are doing the work know. So I think that's brilliant.
They do. Yeah, they're going to know better than anybody, because they're the ones, as I say, struggling with these issues today. And, also for companies that are struggling with labor shortages, they can then look at opportunities to automate certain tasks where they don't need labor to be able to do that, and therefore can ride those shortages a lot easier, by being able to, take some of the tasks that would normally be done manually and move them into automation. And so therefore be able to, rise and ride with the shortages in terms of labor. But I really do believe that the knowledge about where to maximize value within organizations from GenAI rests in the employee base.
Beautiful.
Because
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks a lot for joining the Digital Analyst. I've learned a lot. Really great discussion. Hopefully we can have you back again sometime and go deeper on some of these things, especially after you do your AI governance course, or add AI governance to your data governance course. I think that would be fascinating. Really appreciate you joining. Thanks for all of the insight.
Okay, I appreciate it, John. Many thanks again. Pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining the Digital Analyst podcast. Would absolutely love it if you want to write down below, like and subscribe to the Insight Jam YouTube channel. There's a lot more great content there. If you want to find out more about our guest, Mike Ferguson, go to intelligentbusiness.biz, and you'll find more information about him, all of his 11 master courses on data. If you want more on me, go to ferraroconsulting.com. And I hope you'll join us again. We have a lot more great content coming here on the Digital Analyst.